We've had equal rights for quite some time now. We don't need that. The flag is doing something that's quite pernicious, and it's particularly pernicious because a lot of people don't understand the significance. So I'd like to see that put to an end. I'd like to see Pride over and done with now. I think it's had its day.
Hello and welcome to The View from 22. I'm Lukas Degutis, the Spectator's editorial manager. Last week at the British LGBT Awards, the actor David Tennant received an award for Celebrity Ally. But upon accepting his reward, he made some less than kind remarks about Conservative MP Kemi Badenoch. Let's look at a clip.
It is human decency. We shouldn't live in a world where that is worth remarking on. However, until we wake up and Kemi Badenoch doesn't exist anymore, I don't wish ill of her, I just wish her to shut up.
Kemi then responded on X, saying, "I will not shut up. I will not be silenced by men who prioritise applause from Stonewall over the safety of women and girls. A rich, lefty, white male celebrity so blinded by ideology he can't see the optics of attacking the only black women in government by calling publicly for my existence to end. Tennant is one of Labour's celebrity supporters. This is an early example of what life would be like if they win. Keir Starmer stood by while Rosie Duffield was hounded. He and his supporters will do the same with the country. Do not let the bigots and bullies win." To discuss this, I'm joined by comedian, writer and broadcaster Andrew Doyle. Andrew, last week on your Substack, you had written about David Tennant's comments, but for those people who have not read your piece yet, what did you make of them?
Well, I should start by saying that when he said that he was saying that it would be good if Kemi Badenoch did not exist, of course, he wasn't speaking literally. It was a kind of quip, but it was a quip that was intended to convey a serious point, which is that he thinks there is no merit whatsoever in the objections that Kemi Badenoch is raising about her concerns regarding women's spaces and her concerns about the spread of gender identity ideology and the impact that that has. My feeling about it was that it's a very easy target. Celebrities tend to align on this issue. And the reason they align on this issue is they know absolutely nothing about it. David Tennant hasn't got the first clue about the subject that he is pontificating about. And this is obviously very common with celebrities. I mean, they do this all the time and they always have. So we shouldn't pretend to be surprised at this point. But I do think it's a worry, and he should be criticised for this because this is a very, very serious matter. David Tennant effectively is contributing to this climate in which anyone who raises concerns about gay conversion therapy that's going on the NHS, as we saw from what happened at the Tavistock Clinic, those who raise concern about the fact that women's spaces and rights to single-sex spaces are being eroded, people who raise concerns about rape victims who want to have single-sex care, want to be able to go to a domestic violence refuge centre that doesn't include men, women who are concerned about men in their prisons. You know, all of these things are incredibly serious. And David Tennant is just one of the many who hasn't thought about it, who hasn't listened to any of the counter arguments, who has deliberately insulated himself so that he doesn't need to listen to those arguments, who has framed any opposition as a form of bigotry. And as a result of that, feels that he is not obliged to listen to these very, very legitimate concerns that feminists and gay rights campaigners are making. And of course, the whole thing is incredibly ironic because there he is accepting an award for, what was it, Celebrity Ally at the British LGBT Awards. That must be the least coveted award in the world. And he's accepting that award. But what he is effectively doing is spouting incredibly anti-gay ideas. The idea that it's perfectly fine to medicalize young gay people if they are same-sex attracted. That's the impact. That's what gender identity ideology promotes. We've seen that from what happened at the Tavistock Clinic. We saw from Hannah Barnes's research that between 80 and 90% of adolescents who were referred to the Tavistock were indeed same-sex attracted. So when you promote this idea that you must affirm a child's chosen gender, in the vast majority of cases, those kids are just going to grow up to be gay. You're effectively heterosexualizing, fixing gay kids in the name of progress. So the point is he doesn't understand the issues. But the other point is that how can we expect him to understand the issues? Very few media outlets have been reporting on this. Very few mainstream media outlets, the BBC, ITV, Channel 4, these have always all been complicit in failing to report one of the greatest medical scandals of our time. They haven't covered the WPATH files, the leaked files, which showed that the world's leading body on pediatric gender health knew that this was disproportionately affecting gay individuals, and knew that a majority of those, a substantial number of those individuals had mental health concerns. None of this was covered by the BBC whatsoever. When I contacted the BBC to say, why aren't you covering this? They replied with a frankly very flippant and insulting, dismissive comment. They didn't want to engage. There is a real problem with ideological capture. So, of course, celebrities who aren't minded to investigate the matter, who don't have the, I suppose, the intellectual curiosity to find out about the subjects that they want to sermonize about, of course they're going to parrot this line. But it is dangerous because it affects actual individuals in the real world, women and gay people largely.
You also, in your Substack piece, you touch on David Tennant's Doctor Who, and you point to a particular one scene which is regarding pronouns. And I was just wondering, why do you think, if there's, if this is such a contentious topic now, but there's also very little known specifically about the Tavistock Clinic and some of the dangers around this, why is it that script writers and producers are actually sometimes so keen on including this in their output?
Well, it's like any establishment art or state-sanctioned art. It becomes effectively propaganda rather than entertainment. I mean, that's precisely what's happened. If we were living in a totalitarian regime, all scripts or all creative pieces would have to be passed by the censor, passed by the government, and the government would look at it and say, no, you need to change this messaging. You need to insert some references to the glorious leader or to the deity that we must be worshipping or whatever it might be. That's precisely what's happened in that scene in Doctor Who. I mean, I haven't seen it, that particular episode, because, I wouldn't waste my time. I've seen that clip. And the scene in which the Doctor is berated by his assistant for misgendering a fluffy CGI alien, and then the Doctor asks the alien whether it is a she, he, or they. This is an alien called the Meep, and the Meep then says, "No, I go by the definite article, the Meep." I mean, it's, but it is like something has been shoehorned in at the behest of a high priest. It feels like in the writer's room at Doctor Who, a priest kicked the door down and said, we've got to make sure we get this line of scripture into the show because we need the masses to be observing the right doctrine. That's what's happened there. And of course, it's very heavy-handed. And you see it all the time. You see it in Hollywood films. You can't really watch a Netflix-produced show now that doesn't have some of the doctrine shoehorned into it. It has so infected the arts and entertainment that a lot of people are just willing now to put up with it. But it also means that there is no decent arts and entertainment really being produced at the moment, because everyone has to be every creative individual has to be slightly beholden in some way or another. They have to pledge their fealty to this new religion, and they have to do it in this really unsubtle way, and that's what's happened with Doctor Who. And it's also why, of course, the ratings for Doctor Who are tanking, and the ratings for all of these things are tanking. It's why Hollywood studios like Disney are so baffled as to why their films keep failing. They keep failing because they're producing propaganda, not entertainment. They're producing sermons rather than films. And people don't like being hectored.
I'm also reminded of a piece actually from last year's Spectator Christmas issue from Julie Birchall, who wrote about why she's bored of national treasures. Sort of these people that she describes are wheeled out during Christmas time, but of course could be around the year as well. The likes of Emma Thompson, for example, or Olivia Colman. And she argues that there's an issue with a lot of celebrities basically sharing very similar, if not identical, opinions about politics, the environment, inclusivity, and diversity. And she says it's not necessarily a problem, about celebrities using their fame to draw attention to issues, but it's the fact that for some celebrities, their issues are no longer their views. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the idea of preference falsification, which is that people often say something that they believe to be the popular view rather than their authentic view. I wouldn't like to assume that anyone here is lying. I mean, I know a lot of that goes on, of course it does, but I always start from the basis of just assuming that what the person says, that they mean what they say. I think they just don't know anything about it. So it's very easy for everyone to spout the same ideas on this, because it's a topic that has been largely left uninvestigated by those people themselves. It doesn't bother me either that celebrities express their opinions. They're human beings like anyone else. They've got a complete right to express their views. It just so happens they have a large platform by nature of the work that they do. But I just wish that there was some greater degree of criticism. Well, we're criticizing him now, I suppose, and he has had a lot of criticism for it. But I do wish that they would consider discussing the issue with people a little more. I think that's part of the problem. But then even politicians have this same problem. I mean, the Labour Party has sort of put out in its manifesto that it's kind of fudging this issue. I mean, it's talking about it wants to, make it easier. It wants to modernize gender recognition. It wants to make it easier for people to change their self-declared gender. But it also is trying to recognize the need for single-sex spaces for women. It's fudging it, basically, because, you've had Nadia Whittome saying explicitly they want to resist calls to exclude trans women from women's spaces. Self-ID, no ifs, no buts. That's what Nadia Whittome has said. Well, that would mean, wouldn't it, Isla Bryson or Adam Graham, the double rapist who was temporarily accommodated in a women's prison in Scotland before the downfall of Nicola Sturgeon, that Nadia Whittome would be fine with that, because there are no ifs, no buts when it comes to gender self-ID, apparently. Annalise Dodds, similarly. This is the shadow minister for women and equalities, does not appear to understand the issue. Keeps banging on about the importance for a complete ban on trans conversion therapy, not realizing that is effectively her calling for gay conversion therapy as sanctioned by the government. Now, if you sat down for just 10 minutes with a member of LGB Alliance or the Gay Men's Network or any of these groups, any of these feminist groups that have been pointing this out, you would understand that this is a contentious issue. It is not very clear cut. The fact that Labour and the celebrities we're talking about, the fact that all of these people haven't done that is a real problem, and it points to something in our society. It points to this idea that the Overton window has narrowed to such a degree that there are some viewpoints that are just dismissed outright without discussion. And as I said, the media is complicit. The media has failed to have the kind of discussions that we could have on this subject. Once this is discussed properly and understood properly, then we might be able to move on. But at the moment, you will get these celebrities in lockstep, because I don't understand them. I don't expect them to be experts on anything. Actually, though, this issue is quite simple. 5 minutes with David Tennant and I could explain it to him, but he wouldn't want to talk to me because he doesn't want to know.
I'm actually reminded of Douglas Murray's column in last week's issue of the magazine, where he had also written about David Tennant's comments, and he argued that it's time to realise that sometimes under the guise of pride is prejudice. Do you think people are realising this? And also, what's the future, in your view, for pride in the West?
Pride is now, in its current manifestation, a celebration of homophobia. It flies the Progress Pride flag, which is a symbol of an ideology that seeks to medicalise young people who are same-sex attracted, that seeks to shame gay people for being attracted to their own sex. We've even had it from companies like Grindr, saying that they're not going to allow you to filter out women who identify as men because you'd be a bigot otherwise. And of course, well, men who aren't attracted to women aren't bigots, they're homosexual. Now, that all of that ideology is summarized in that Progress Pride flag. That's what it means. So when you see those flags fluttering in very militaristic regimental form on Regent Street throughout the holy month of Pride, when you see all these people marching up the streets, flying those flags very brazenly, what you're seeing is a huge extravaganza, a celebration of the idea that homosexuality should not exist, that it needs to be eradicated. I caught a boat in London the other day, one of those boats that's, you can use your touch in, touch out thing. It's part of TfL, I think. So that's government funded. It had the flag flying from the boat, even though I don't believe it's legal, actually, to fly such flags in public. But they did it. It's everywhere. I was in Dublin recently. That flag was draped all over the city. There was a huge one on the airport. It's a form of kind of colonization. And because it is a colonization of an anti-gay ideology, this is very, very difficult for a lot of gay people to take. What is very interesting, though, is that increasingly gay people are rejecting pride. They're saying, no, this is predominantly about heterosexuals with a kink. This is predominantly fetishists. This is mostly people who identify into an oppressed class by saying they are part of the TQ plus. It's got nothing to do with LGB anymore, because the TQ plus element of that works actively against the interests of gay people. That conflict is not resolvable. You can't have it both ways. You can't have rights for gay people, rights, a recognition in society that there are always going to be a minority of people who are attracted to their own sex, and at the same time has an ideology that says that those same people should be ashamed and should be demonized as bigots if they are attracted to their own sex. Those two things are just not reconcilable. They are completely incommensurable as far as I can see. So what it will ultimately mean is gay people waking up to the point that pride no longer represents them, that it works actively against them, that it is hostile to them. And maybe we'll get a few less useful idiots. There's a lot of gay celebrities, for instance, flying the flag for pride, not realizing that they're trying to take us back in our rights, or that will be the impact of this. So I think eventually the future will be, well, it already is. I mean, pride has gone from being a very important resistance for the rights of gay people in a society that did not accept them. If you go back to the original Pride March in 1970, that's what it was for. Those people who were marching risked physical violence, risked all sorts of problems because, in America, it was illegal in every state except Illinois when that first Pride March occurred in New York. Things have changed. Now, the Pride March represents the opposite. The Pride March represents the elimination of homosexuality. And gay people, as far as I can see, should reject it. And more they are. I actually don't know any gay people who now support Pride. Not one. Now, you might say that's because of the circles I move in, but I move in pretty broad circles and have a lot of friends from the left and the right and everywhere in between. And I don't know any gay people who think that it's a good thing. It's one of those things where a lot of people keep their opinions to themselves. To go back to that point about preference falsification, it's a lot of the things where people are scared of saying what they really think about it. But, when you see those flags, those Progress Pride flags up on your school, in shops, on corporate buildings, on government buildings, if you're a gay person, you should probably be saying, hang on a minute, why are you flying a flag that says that I shouldn't have my rights? But they don't do that because they don't interpret it that way, or they don't understand it, or they're scared of being called bigots if they do express that view. So what I would like to see happen is for particularly government bodies, particularly schools, particularly places like that, to realize that it's not a neutral act to fly that flag. You're not just supporting the rights of gay people. We won that ages ago. We've had equal rights for quite some time now. We don't need that. The flag is doing something that's quite pernicious, and it's particularly pernicious because a lot of people don't understand the significance. So I'd like to see that put to an end. I'd like to see Pride over and done with now. I think it's had its day.
Thanks so much, Andrew, for taking the time to join us on Spectator TV.
Thanks a lot.